What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. This is Real Talk with Lion. In today's episode, I'm kind of excited because it's my first episode where I have a guest, Arrezo from Wish Upon Arrezo. She's on Instagram. She's on the podcast channels. She's on TikTok. I'm gonna put the links of all her stuff in the description to this video so you can check her channel out. She's I guess I'm going to just let you kind of introduce yourself, like you're a relationship therapist, you're a dating coach as well. I'm just going to allow you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this today. My name is Arrezo Azim, and I am a relationship coach, also studying positive psychology right now and getting my master's. And yeah, I'm really excited to go through this.
Yeah, so what we're talking about today is a subject that we're kind of discussing this right before we pressed record today, but the subject that we kind of both feel that we come across a lot on both our channels is the whole concept that, whether in dating situations or otherwise, right? Whether it's in our careers, our businesses, our relationship with our kids, our relationship with our, friends, with our peers, we tend to always attract a certain type of behavior, whether we realize it or not, whether we're doing it consciously or we're just doing it subconsciously based on just like our past patterns or things that we have just been doing all the time. We tend to encourage a certain type or discourage a certain type of behavior, as well as attract certain types of people and maybe even certain types of relationships. So in today's episode, what we want to talk about is kind of discuss some of the ways that we show up, right? That encourages certain types of, and we kind of are going to relate it mainly around, dating and relationships. But again, this is something that applies to really any social setting, right? Regardless of like the specific type of relationships, whether it's friendships, business relationships, all that. So we just want to talk again about like the specific types of things that we are doing or not doing that's encouraging certain type of behavior, certain types of people, certain types of relationships. So I guess I'm just going to open up, and just maybe like let you kind of share a little bit of your experience. I know that we talked a little bit about with you, and you mentioned that one of a big subject of your channel, your podcast that you talk about with your clients is online dating. And I know that, and that's very true for me too. Like I know that so many people, as much as they are, some of my clients and some people who are watching this are using online dating and are getting good results from online dating. Some people are really, kind of against. Maybe they've tried it a couple of times. Maybe they haven't even, and they just potentially just heard a few, horror stories and talked to a few of their friends, and they're like, I want to completely stay away from that. Is that something that you deal with?
Yeah, so I actually started an online dating podcast, and it was just something that I realized with my clients and even some of my friends, where there's this idea that online dating is the problem, and it's like a bad thing. It's a negative thing. And there's this weird connotation going around that, when you go on online dates, if it's a bad experience, we immediately go, oh, it's because it was an online date. It's because I met this person online. And I really wanted to understand, maybe what is it that we're doing or not doing when it comes to the dating apps, where maybe this is kind of causing us to think of it in a negative way. And with some of my clients, I actually had a client recently who told me that they hated the apps and they were constantly meeting people that were emotionally unavailable and didn't actually want anything serious. And they were like, it's the app's fault. And so I just asked them a few basic questions. I'm like, okay, so how are you showing up when you're on these apps? And how often are you responding back? Like, how engaging are you with these conversations? And they responded, well, I just get really busy and I just don't have time for a few days to respond. And I forget and a week goes by and I just don't even check it. And I think that's one thing I've noticed is if you're showing up without putting that as much of an effort into it, and then getting upset that the other person is emotionally unavailable, that kind of speaks to a little bit of a pattern there, where if you want someone that's going to show up and if you want someone that's emotionally available, you have to put in effort to getting to know that person. You have to put in effort to try. So that's just one part, that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, I feel like effort, and the other part is a certain level of vulnerability. You know what I mean? Because it is, to a certain extent, like you do need to put yourself out there and be willing and open and that's scary to a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like that's, especially if they've potentially been burnt a couple of times, or, ghosted online a couple of times. So we tend to, want to close up. We tend to want to, you know what I mean? Like give people only a very, very little, and then kind of hope that they will do all the vulnerable stuff, and then we kind of, and once we see that, then, and that we tend to just both be on that very same, the boat, where we're on opposite ends. So like, we're waiting for them to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more available, a little bit more open. And we're waiting for them to do that as well. So and that just tends to, hold us back from being able to really connect, right? Because it does come with that, it does come with a certain level of just like, we need to be able to accept that vulnerability. And yeah.
Which I actually think goes back to, having to accept some of the stuff that you've gone through in your past, which instead of like blaming the apps, I think it's important to be like, okay, you know what? It hasn't worked out. Maybe with the last person that I was talking to, or I went on a few dates that weren't good. Take some time. I'm not asking anyone to like jump on and keep dating people and keep getting hurt and let that domino effect happen. Give yourself some space and time before, you're moving from person to person. Give yourself some time to be like, well, what story am I telling myself about what happened with that person? Because if I tell myself this negative story that they didn't want me, I'm going to go out into the world, into the dating world, with this assumption that someone else is not going to want me because I'm not good enough. So if I tell this story, they didn't choose me, I'll keep thinking people aren't going to choose me, and I'll be very guarded. But maybe if I look at the story for what it is, maybe this person was really busy. Maybe this person wasn't ready because they had other things going on in their life. Maybe, whatever was a them problem, let me leave the story as like, we just weren't connecting. Wherever we were at, it wasn't the same page. And let me just like take that in and just be like, that just means this door needed to close. Yeah. So I also, another point is, I think being okay with asking yourself, how much am I willing to invest, knowing that I may not get much back? I think that's something that's hard for us to accept. Sometimes nobody wants to invest at all, and we're all just kind of waiting for the other person to invest, kind of like what you just said. But I think we have to ask ourselves, how much am I willing to be vulnerable and invest, knowing that it still may not work out, like the stock market,
I like that you relate that to the stock market. Yes. Yeah, but to me, it's also like a lot of it has to do with just like it is a numbers game. You know what I mean? So to me, like that, the process is a numbers game. So if I'm getting ghosted, it's part of that process. You know what I mean? And it's just like learning to accept that. Yeah, that's I'm not unhappy about it. I'm not happy about it. I'm not frustrated about it. It's within that's what I expected. If I'm a monogamous person and I'm looking for, you know what I mean? And I'm looking for one person, like, then by definition, I know for a fact that 99% of people that I'm going to meet, I'm not going to end up with. And that means that those people at some point, things are going to fizzle out one way or the other. So we're either going to go on a date and it's not going to be really good and we're not going to see each other again. They're either going to, I don't know, it's going to be a good conversation, but then they ghost me or I ghost them, or we just kind of like decide to tell each other that we don't want to continue, exploring this relationship further. Sometimes we're going to communicate that clearly and in writing and verbalize it. Sometimes we won't. And that's kind of like all within my, like, expected journey. If I expect it this way, then I'm like, oh okay, that's not it. But I'm not like on a, you know what I mean? I'm not feeling any type of way about it. Like, I'm not positive or negative about it. Oh, okay, well, this is part of the process and I just need to continue. Because again, by definition, if I'm looking for one person because I'm looking for monogamy, then I know that most people, by far most people, 99% of people that I'm going to meet are not going to work out for me. And that's just completely fine, because that's just a question of compatibility. So I just need to be able just to like, learn from each experience and see and adjust myself along the way, see if I'm making certain or I'm doing or not doing certain things, like we talked about from the beginning, like that are encouraging certain things that I don't want. And like, just, if I can just make myself better and learn from my mistakes and then that's the process. And I just need to accept that.
Yeah. I sometimes correlate dating and maybe like ghosting or rejection with when I was going into college, I applied to so many different universities in California, and I didn't really get in the first time I applied right after high school. And it was really difficult. It was hard for me to accept that, especially with my family, that right after high school, I couldn't do it. And instead of just giving up altogether, I gave myself a year or two, went to community, and I got accepted to every single university I wanted to after that. And it was that moment where it was like, I didn't allow this to stop me. That rejection from the schools didn't stop me from being like, okay, if I can't do it this way, I'm going to change the way that I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it in a better way and like put myself back out there again. And I got into, again, every school. And same with jobs. You know, we apply to jobs. You don't get every job that you apply for. And it's meant that way, where if every door opened and you got everything you ever wanted, then, you know, we don't necessarily learn from our mistakes. We don't learn from the experiences. It's part of the journey. How I really want people to see dating is, whether that's an online date or someone you met, you know, through a friend, go into the experience with the notion that no expectation, but also like, it may not mean we may not want the same things. We may not like the same things, but I'm going to have a great memory. I'm going to come out of it with a great story. I'm going to have an experience from it. I'm going to learn something from it. This person's going to hold a mirror to me. So I think rejection needs to be seen as more of a positive thing to elevate you, opposed to a negative thing that makes people want to crumble. I think you should put that in front of you and be like, okay, this person doesn't want what I want. I'm gonna, if not this, something better, you know? And I think that's the same way I looked at life. If I had stopped and never applied for college, you know, I wouldn't have elevated myself. But it was that moment where I was like, this rejection is redirecting me and going to bring me back to something that I needed.
Yeah, stop and reapply, but also like the approach that you have developed, because I feel like in dating, that's what it often becomes the main reason that keeps holding us back is our perspective on things. So for example, like you mentioned before, if I'm on online dating, if I am on online dating, if I am using the apps, but I'm negative about it, I'm like, you know what? It sucks. You know, it's terrible. And people just want one thing. And it's vastly, a waste of my time. And most people I'm going to meet are just like, ugh, and they're, you know, horrible. And it's just like a combination of all of these. If that's my energy, that becomes now the main reason that keeps recreating that same experience that that I'm trying to change, that I think that I'm trying to change, but I'm not changing, because that my energy towards that, right? So if I'm approaching online dating, and for example, one of the examples that I see a lot is like, I don't know if you see that with your clients, but like people literally go on this like rant in their bio, like on their dating app. It's like, all right, don't talk to me if you're this. No. And I'm like, okay, that negativity that you have developed is now influencing how you show up and is become the number one reason that's holding you back from actually connecting with someone. Because what do you think a person who's reading your profile is thinking? Oh my God, this person seems to be so amazing and so positive, and they're going to add value to my life, and I feel like I'm going to go on a date with them, and we're just going to laugh. And no, they're like, listen, this is negativity, and I want to, you know, the only people that it's attracting are those who are looking at you as a victim, because that's how you show up. You know, so they're looking at you as an easy victim. Look, this is a bio of a person who's hurt, who's frustrated, who's guarded, who's probably easy to manipulate. Because if I just sprinkle a couple of, you know, nice words and the things that I know they want to hear based on, you know what I mean, what I've seen so far, they're going to open up like a flower. You know what I mean? They're just going to allow me to do whatever I want with them. Right. Yeah. So like that, and that's and that becomes now, and again, this is like the subconscious things that we're doing that's now attracting certain types of people and also certain types of behavior that I don't want. Because, you know what I mean? Like people say like, oh, it's just not the right guy, or it's just not the right girl. It's not just the right person. It could have been, you know what I mean? But they've treated you this way because you have showed up this way. You know what I mean? The same guy, just like the same girl, is going to treat two different people, again, whether in romantic situations or otherwise, two different people absolutely and completely differently at the exact same time. You know what I mean? So a guy's going to meet one girl and be like, listen, all I want to do with this girl is maybe like spend the night, and I don't ever want to talk to her again. And he's going to want to marry another girl. That's, you know, the next day that he meets the next day. It's not, we can learn the wrong lesson and be like, oh, this guy is a player, or this guy is this, or this girl is, you know, this way. Or we can say, hey, is there something that I'm doing again or not doing that's encouraging this? Right? That's encouraging that type. Like, why they not want, or they don't see, you know, again, if I'm there and I'm just like very negative, that's one thing. I don't want to build a relationship with you, right?
I think we all have our insecurities. And at the end of the day, some people, when they wear it on their sleeves and it's the first thing that they tell people, it's kind of like if I'm afraid of you not committing to me, and I'm constantly bringing that up in the beginning by being like, well, the last person didn't want to commit, so I need to know, you know, do you want to commit? Is this something that you want? If you throw that insecurity out there with these questions right away, that sometimes does attract someone who is going to tell you what you want to hear. to get exactly what you just said, to get your attention, to kind of get whatever they want out of it. And then at the end of the day, like, that's not necessarily how they actually feel too. If I go into it being like, I want someone who is really good at texting and someone who's going to make me a priority and someone who's going to put time into me, if I say that right away, the other person's not going to be like, oh, I don't want that. If let's say they're not good texters, and if let's say they actually don't have time and there's a lot going on in their lives, they're not going to tell you, oh, wait, you know what? I'm not actually good at this myself. They're going to say, yeah, I agree with you. That is something that I want to. And they're going to show up as that person that you want them to, because you're showing up with your insecurity right away, being like, please make sure that you do these things for me. So I think as that maybe some people are consciously doing it. Maybe you're doing it subconsciously. I think it's super important to notice, like, am I showing up as my insecure self right now, wanting to make sure my fears don't come out, or wanting me to make sure that, like, I'm not getting attracted by these things that I'm fearful of. So I think you should always hold back and set boundaries. Like, if let's say you're fearful of getting rejected, opposed to like constantly asking questions, well, what do you want? What are you looking for? Do you care about me? I want you to show up as someone who's like, you know what, I'm not 100% sure. So I'm not just going to give you my all, and I don't need to say what I'm looking for. I'm just going to see how you show up and see if that works for me. I think it's super important to know, like, okay, I want someone who's consistent. You don't need to tell them that. You go into it. Are they consistent? And if they
you
are,
don't want to influence that either. You know what I mean? I want that to come out naturally. If I have to tell you that I'm looking for someone inconsistent and that makes you more consistent, then, you know, I'm just, you know, robbing myself of my future self. Yeah.
I think it's super important to just be like, well, what is this person showing me where they're at? And does that work for me? Because how it works for you doesn't work for everyone. But opposed to like looking for like, well, I need this and I need this and I need you to have this, just go on the date, get to know the person. If you start to see signs that the person is not maybe consistent or isn't showing up emotionally available, you reassess and you set boundaries with that. And I think that's where people have that problem. I've noticed my clients is they go from one person to the next. And I keep using emotionally unavailable people, but I don't know, maybe you can give me a different example, but I'll go with that one for right now. If you're going from one emotionally unavailable person to the next one, before you go to the next one, ask yourself, how did I show up there? That probably didn't work. Maybe I was allowing them to see me whenever they wanted to see me. Maybe I was like texting them constantly and I got attached to texting them. So it was hard for me to think logically. And I think that's something that we have to do. Is I'm not saying don't text them, but I'm saying set a little bit of a boundary where you're not just diving head first and not thinking, does this something that actually works for me? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole emotional, you know, unavailable, again, it's very, because it's not, most of the time, it's not because the person is just, you know, in principle, just an emotionally unavailable person. They might be emotionally available for something or someone else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the exact same time, you know? So like, it's again, it's about taking that accountability and be like, I'm encouraging not only a certain type of people, but certain types of people, but also certain types of behavior from people who otherwise, you know what I mean? Because I mean, I talked to a female client, you know what I mean? And she tells me about like guys that she's, you know, dated recently. One guy, and she's like, oh yeah, I slept with him on the first night. The other guy's like, oh, we dated 6 months and I kind of made him wait this entire time. I'm like, see, one guy is seeing you as someone who, you know what I mean, is in a rush to get things physical, and someone else is seeing you very, very differently, right? You just act based on what these people, you know, individually represent, like how they show up, you know, how. And you're just treating them very differently. People treat people and that's like, it doesn't have to, like, people kind of see that and hear that. And when I say that sometimes, and they're like, they think it comes from like a malicious or manipulative place. And it's not. It's like, we automatically do that. We walk down the street and we see people, they start talking to us, and we develop how we are going to treat them right there and then, just based on how they show up. Right. Yeah. I don't know if your friend group, I know in my friend group, there are different people out there. And it's not coming from a bad place. I'm not trying to be, you know what I mean, a manipulator or whatever. But there's certain people I'm like, I know I can make a joke at Mike's expense. I know I can make it. You know, I can do it. And he's going to laugh it out and everyone's going to laugh it out. But if I do that with Steve, you know what I mean? Steve is going to let me have it. And I'm not going to talk to him for a couple of months because he's not that kind of guy. He's not going to allow this to happen, or he's going to close. So I'm not going to do it with him, but I'm going to do it with somebody else, you know, because again, I'm going to treat them based on how they show up, based on how, and I just do that subconsciously. I just do that just as human beings. We tend to, you know, kind of like observe and then respond, you know, accordingly. So again, it's like, if you're getting this type of behavior, don't learn the wrong lesson. It doesn't necessarily mean that this person or the last 5 guys or the last 5 women or whatever that you have met or every person that you meet on a dating app is, like you said, either emotionally unavailable or, you know what I mean? Just wants, one thing, or just wants, like, the physical components. A guy, like I said, or a woman would want to, like, engage in certain levels of intimacy with one person rather quickly and want to wait or never do it with someone else. And it all depends on who that person is, and how they show up. So I feel like, again, that's so important to just, like, take that into consideration, be like, oh, not every person, you know what I mean, I'm going to meet is going to be a certain way. But if they are a certain way, then I have to kind of like think about the fact that I am the common denominator. So if every guy is emotionally unavailable or shows certain signs of being emotionally unavailable, maybe it's specifically directed towards me. Maybe there's something I'm doing. Because what are the chances that either everyone out there is emotionally unavailable, or I'm doing something that is encouraging a certain type of behavior?
I think that's one way of looking at it. There's the side of, like, okay, the common denominator could be me because I am attracting all these emotionally unavailable people. Yeah. Another side is I don't want people to assume, like, I'm the problem always as to why I'm getting this, because I think other aspects is, let's just take in the side of society. There are more people who are not ready for relationships out in the dating pool. There are more single people that are guarded, that aren't ready for relationships out in the single pool, more than people who are, like, secure, ready for relationships. It's just kind of how it is. So with every, let's say, 5 people you meet, you may meet 3 people or 4 people who are not ready for something, who are probably going through something else and cannot give you the level of attention or affection that you want. And that just kind of, it's just like we said, the numbers game, where it's like, you're going to meet those people. You're going to meet bad apples. When you meet them, how do you want to handle it? How do you want to show up? How do you, because I think at the end of the day, if you are a great person and you're secure and you have a great head on your shoulders and you go out into the dating world and you're dating for the first time online and you see all these people who just don't want what you want, I don't want you to immediately assume, oh, it's because of me. Because if you're showing up the way that you should be, and you know that you should be, sometimes it could also be like, they're just not the person for me. You have to decipher, when is it a good time to kind of close that door? Because I think the problem isn't that you're going to meet them. The problem is, how long are you letting them to stay in your life? So it's like, if you see the bad signs, are you allowing it to stay and getting mad? Like, oh, wow, they're not showing up the way that I need to, or it's not working the way I need to, but yet you keep staying. You're giving them the attention. You're answering their phone calls. You're answering their texts. Like, you're hanging out with them. And if you do all those things, you're giving off the energy that, like, this is okay behavior. So it's your job to also just be like, okay, it's not a me problem, it's a you problem. So I'm just going to set that boundary here to pull away from you,
Absolutely. If you set up these boundaries for yourself, like, other people have no choice but to, like, treat you the same way that you want to be treated, because otherwise they just won't get access. They just won't be able to stay in your life. But like you said, that's what's encouraging that and perpetuating that behavior. If you're just allowing that to happen, that you are okay with it. And most of the time, like, actions speak louder than words. Like, you can say, like, oh, I don't really like when you do this, but yet you continue giving them access. Your actions are saying, no, I'm cool with it. You can continue treating me like that. Like, you can continue this because here I am. I'm still giving you access to myself. We're still going on dates. Maybe I'm potentially still engaging in, like, physical intimacy with you and, everything else that entails. So, like, I'm telling you that, hey, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm cool with it, even though my words might be telling you, oh, I don't really like this, or you need to change that. But my actions are telling you otherwise.
Yeah.
Actions do speak much louder than words on both sides. So it's like we tend to, base ourselves off of that much more than, someone's words.
Yeah. Like, I recently had a client who, she, was on the dating apps and was trying to meet people. And again, it was hard for her because whenever she was getting closer to someone, it was like she was saying, like, I want monogamy, I want relationship, I want more long-term, but she was unfortunately giving in to hanging out every single day with this person and, not putting a label on it after 6 months and like kind of just like allowing this person to cancel plans on her whenever he, wanted to hang out with his friends. And to me, that type of behavior was like, you can cancel on me, you can choose other people every single time, and you can do whatever you want to do, and I'm still going to be here. And yet she still kept telling me, what I want is something else. What you want is this, but you're doing this. And I think at the end of the day, even if you were to do this, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get there with them. you know, like maybe they don't want something serious and you're giving into whatever they want. I think it's your job to be like, this person isn't my person. I have to walk away. Not, I have to walk away in hopes that they'll change their mind and they will do better and they will come back and like give me what I want. No, you have to walk away knowing like I'm closing that door because this person doesn't want what I want, and that's okay. I'm going to get that from someone else who does want it.
I love what you just said right now, and that I just want to like kind of highlight it a little bit for those who might have missed it, and that is getting what you want is your job, not theirs. So many people put themselves out there and they think that if they just broadcast it and if they just announce, be like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm looking for something serious, right? Because this is something I hear a lot. But I told them that I'm looking for a serious relationship. So if they didn't want one, why waste my time? And I'm like, no. The responsibility, it falls on you 1,000%. Their job is to get what they want, whatever that thing is. Your job is to get what you want. So if you're not getting what you want, it's not about broadcasting and saying, hey, I'm announcing that this is what I'm looking for. And if you're not looking for the same thing, then you have to leave. Like, no, if they're getting what they want, then they should stay. You know what I mean? That's like their job is to make sure that they're getting what it's working for them. Exactly. Now, making sure that it's working for you is your responsibility and yours alone. So the boundaries fall on you. If they have boundaries, these boundaries are for them. They're doing these and creating these boundaries to protect themselves in this situation and make sure that they're getting what they want. Your job is to make sure that you're getting what you want. So going out there, like this question like comes so often is like, well, I told them that I'm looking for something serious. So if they weren't interested in that, like, then why waste my time? Why waste their own time? Like, no, they're not wasting their time. They're getting what they want. Look at that. They wanted for something, casual. They're getting it. They're reaping all the benefits of a casual relationship with you. You're the one who's not getting this and hoping that something eventually will change. So yeah, that's so
important. Boundaries would you set? What boundaries would you tell your followers and your clients to set in those situations?
Well, I feel like, again, boundaries, really depend and change from one person to the next. Because I look at boundaries specifically on the things that and the patterns that you've had. What are you doing? Because certain different people are good with setting certain boundaries and are very bad with setting other boundaries. You know what I mean? But the one thing that I feel like is something that comes back a lot and a huge misconception when it comes to boundaries is our ability to understand like what boundaries are supposed to do. Right? People think that boundaries are like, okay, so for example, if I'm starting to date someone and I'm not ready for certain things. So like we're hanging out at a restaurant and let's say you're inviting me over to my house. You're inviting me over to your house. And now let's say I'm not ready because I'm like, I want something serious. And I say to myself, I should have a boundary, about like, physical intimacy, which is like, let's talk about like a typical boundary, right? Like not sleeping with someone or not engaging in certain levels of intimacy, whether that's kissing or other things prematurely, right? We can agree that that's like a very simple, common boundary that people kind of like tend to understand that, should probably be there. People think that it's like, I need to set up a boundary where I don't want to do that. So if let's say I don't like this guy yet, or I'm not too sure, then I need to set, I'm like, no. These boundaries are to protect you from you. So to me, these boundaries are basically like, I know myself. So if I kiss someone, right, I don't even have to sleep with them. If I kiss someone on whatever date, I know for a fact that as a human being, or I just know myself personally, and we can talk about the whole like biology of what's going on like hormonally in your brain. We don't really have to, but there's a lot of things that just happen to you automatically. It's not like, oh, but I don't really care. Like I don't really like get attached from this. I'm like, you're a human being, and chances are your brain works in a very similar fashion than most people. And when we engage in certain levels of intimacy, whether that's kissing, sometimes even just holding hands, sometimes even just like, sexting, or maybe are actually sleeping with someone, our brain releases certain hormones that makes it this, which is the entire reason why it feels good in the first place. Right. And these hormones, right, whether that's oxytocin and dopamine and a mix of a whole bunch of other things, like that creates an emotional connection and emotional dependence, and that's what makes us want and expect a very specific type of outcome. You know what I mean? And makes us very kind of it builds up the expectations towards a very specific outcome.
Right.
So if we need, like, the reason why we need boundaries is to protect us essentially from ourselves. So if I know that if I kiss you tonight, I'm going to create a certain expectation at this point, and I'm not at the point where I even know you that well, right? Then I need to create these boundaries for me, to protect me from my own biological self. not because I don't want to. Some people it's like, oh, because I didn't want to. I'm like, why did you sleep with this guy? Oh, I wanted to. I'm like, oh no, like that's not where the boundary is. The boundary is not like I need to like hit him on the wrist when he's doing something that I don't want to do. Is like, no, like when you don't want to do, that's simple. Like you just say no and you walk away. That's usually people don't have a trouble with that. People have problems with the, when they do want to. They're like, oh, boundaries lying. Boundaries are easy when I don't like the guy, but they're super hard when I like him. I'm like, that's kind of the whole point. Like that's, it's when you do like him. It's when you do want to engage in these things, you need to create these boundaries to protect yourself, to protect you from yourself, essentially, from what you are going to start doing. And again, it's just, you just have to make sure that you level with yourself and be like, hey, I've done that before. So I know that if I slept, one of the things that I ask a lot of my clients, like, okay, so here's how you're feeling about the situation. I know that it's frustrating, and usually that's the point where they come, work with me. On like, let's say like you didn't kiss him and you didn't sleep with him yet, and you didn't like, oh, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now. And I'm like, exactly, you know what I mean? Like, so all of these things create a certain expectation. They create an emotional attachment, towards a specific outcome and an emotional attachment with that very specific person right now. So the reason why you need these boundaries is to protect you from that. So you are able to say like, you know what? All right. So I'm seeing these signs, like you said, if I'm seeing red flags, if I'm seeing, but if I don't set these boundaries, then we tend to blind ourselves to these red flags. Like, yeah, but we've been sleeping together and we're doing all of these things. Like, it will change, or he will change, or eventually he'll realize, or with time we just don't know each other really well, or maybe after the new year when he's less busy, he'll start putting a little more effort and blah blah, or maybe it's his job, or maybe it's his he'll eventually like break up with that, or like finalize his divorce. Or I hear all these different stories and all of these different excuses that women tend to make up for men, because men don't even have to do that in the first place. But all of these excuses always come from the same place, and that's usually the lack of boundaries. It's because we have allowed ourselves to get to the point where we are creating a certain expectation, we are creating a certain emotional dependence and attachment, and that's when all of these excuses start coming out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the excuses that we give for others and the excuses that they give to us and we hold on to can sometimes also be us or people like wanting to hold on to hope. So if someone were to say, I'm just really sorry, like I've been really busy, I haven't been able to give you as much time. And, sometimes I do think that you have to give the person some
which
leeway.
Is cool, by the way. Yeah, no, we're complete strangers.
Happen. Yeah, exactly. But then
I shouldn't be a number one.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
but then
please go on.
No. And then sometimes it's like, okay, you give that person a little bit of a leeway, but then you start to convince yourself of these excuses over and over again for months and months and months. And to me, that just means you're holding on to the hope that one day it will change. And if you hold on to hope and you lack your boundaries, this is the only thing that's in your control to change. You cannot change him. You cannot make him try better or make him show up better, or even think that your love will be enough to change, the way that they treat you. It's your job to say, okay, I've given this person X amount of, this is why I go back to the stock market. How much time am I willing to give this person while they're got all these things going on before I say enough is enough? So if I say, I'll give this person 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, if I still hear the same excuse, if nothing has changed, I've already exceeded how much I'm willing to spend waiting on someone to take me out on a second date or a third date or something like that, where it's like, you have to really just ask, how much time am I willing to invest, knowing that I may not get anything out of it? And then especially with boundaries, it's like, if you're lacking your boundaries, you have to just take a second, not beat yourself up and be like, oh my God, I made this mistake. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall. You're going to sometimes say the wrong thing. You're going to sometimes do the wrong thing. That is okay. But it's in your job to take a second and reflect and be like, okay, maybe I should just work on that, tweak it, and not do that again next time. Maybe I should work on that and tweak it. And next time I see them, I'll just put a better, boundary in place. I don't need to tell them, oh, that's never going to happen again. And, this is my boundary and I broke my boundary and I can't have that happening. You don't need to over explain to the other person. You just need to let yourself know, okay, I dropped my own boundary. I got to reassess. I got to work on that for the future. We're not saying that like anyone's perfect. You have to be perfect in dating. You will fall. When you fall, don't keep falling and falling and falling and falling and then blaming the other person. It's important to be like, okay, I think I tweaked my boundary here. I know that I'm the type of person that if I continue doing this, I will get hurt. Or if I continue doing this, this will affect me. So maybe I should take a little bit of a step back here. And I always tell my clients, if you feel like you get attached by spending too much time with someone or, texting someone often, if you make something a new habit, which is aka this new person in your life, then you're going to get so used to having them that if, let's say, you give it a few weeks, you give it a month, you're like, oh wow, they're not the right person for me. But because I created this bond of constantly having them in my day-to-day life, I don't want to let go. So I always say the boundary you should probably set if you're the type of person to get attached really quickly is to not talk and see that person and hang out with them every single day constantly and make them that like number one priority. Once you make them that number one, no matter how many red flags come in front of your face, you're going to want to make excuses for them because you don't want to let that go.
Absolutely. And whether you are a person that considers yourself to be, someone who attaches too quickly or not, like and that's something that's so important. People feel like, have you ever heard, I'm sure you heard that before. Like, you know what I mean? If you really wanted to, like he would, or if he's really into you, if a guy really, really likes you, then he would do all of these things. I'm like, if you're saying these things before you actually went on a single or a date, or maybe even after a first or second date, he doesn't know you. You don't know him. He should not be serious about you at this point. You should not be serious about him at this point. Why would you be? Based on what? Like a few like facial features that you're like, oh, this is attractive. What, you know what I mean? Or how good they are on paper, like, no, like you don't know the first thing about each other. So you should not be serious about each other. You should definitely not be each other's number one priority. I'm a big, I talk a lot about like, learning the right way of how to even date multiple people at the same time. So it's easier to maintain a certain level of like detachment at these early stages, because you shouldn't be attached to either a person or an outcome if you've been on barely a couple of dates with them. And it's easier to do, like you said, like it's easier to do. One thing that I, really talk about a lot is creating a full life, which is, what I mean? Like if you have nothing going on, yeah, it's very likely that you will just clench on to anything. So if a person is like, went out with you and showed you a good time, and like, oh, you would want to do this again because you have nothing going on. You know what I mean? Like maybe you have a job like 9 to 5, and then like you come back home and like nothing going on, and you like it's either watching Netflix or just hanging out with them or talking to them or texting them. Yeah, you'll choose that every time, and you'll create that. But then that energy, that anxious, energy that you will be developing and showing will attract a certain outcome, will attract a certain behavior. And you're like, oh, why is every person like, it starts off well, and then all of a sudden they decide to take a step back, or they ghost me, or they disappear. And this is something I deal with and see a lot firsthand with my clients. Like, you see these things, what you're doing, and then here's some of the things that you could do. Number one, you need to create a more interesting life for yourself. Beyond the fact that you're just going to become a lot more interesting to people and just have more fun living, your life. But it's also going to allow you to create that level of detachment, because you're like, well, yeah, I can go on a date, but you know what? I can also go and, I don't know, play tennis because I really, really love that too. And I can then go and, visit my friend and do that. And I have a travel and I have a trip coming up. And I also have this hobby and I have this passion project. I've been creating this podcast, blah, blah, blah. And that's exciting for me as well. You know what I mean? There's all of these things going on in your life. So you're creating that detachment because they don't become your everything, like that. So that number one. Number two is being able to like just create more opportunities for yourself, learn how to use online dating to meet more people and create more opportunities, as well as what do you need to do in your day-to-day life. And this is something I work a lot individually with people and look at their specific situations. Here's some of the things that you can do today to start meeting more people in your regular, some people go, oh yeah, I have my groceries delivered at home. And then like I work from home and my gym is in my building and I'm like, hey, not meeting anyone. Let me get, no. What do you expect to happen? You know what I mean? Like so what can you do intentionally to meet more people? So you're meeting more people. You are building a more interesting life. So you become a lot more what people would consider like now secure. And this is just you just build up a more interesting life and just like create it in, you have options and you have different opportunities and now you're approaching it very, very differently. You're approaching it from a place of abundance. You're like, oh, if it's not this dude, it's okay. He seems nice, but I'm not creating a premature. Now it's easier for me to say like, all right, it's not it. You know what I mean? To look at things objectively and decide like, oh, this is not my person, because it's not, if it's not him, it's nothing. And I'm going back home to my cats. It's like, if it's not him, then I have this potential date that I'm going on next week. And I have this activity and I have this business thing that I'm working on. And I have, you know what I mean? Like Steve that I'm meeting next weekend. And, we're probably going to like, enjoy our whatever date or whatever. So now it becomes so much easier to let go. Like we let go. We stop going through these dates with like our fists clenched and anxious and insecure and fearful of you losing the other person. And we become a lot more confident. And hey, you know what I mean, the other side of that coin is that it actually makes us a lot more attractive, because
Yeah.
people look at us and be like, oh wow, like this person is confident, they show up to a date, you know what I mean, they don't force things to happen, they also just like, even without trying, like the fact that we become a little bit more busy and we don't schedule a date for tonight, and like, oh, what are you doing tonight? Like, we don't respond to that anymore because we probably didn't even see the text, you know, and we schedule for next week. So all of these are then creating these signs of a person, of an attractive person who's, you know what I mean, who's a catch. And now we like, this person is the person I genuinely would want to potentially explore a longer term, you know, relationship with.
Yeah, that
So
actually just reminded me, sorry to cut you off, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, like, in all these people, sometimes, like I said, yes, there are people out there who maybe not, you know, looking for relationships, but there's also going to be a lot of people right now that, you know what I mean, didn't want a relationship, and all of a sudden they meet the person like that, like, oh, I don't want to I didn't go out there, wake up this morning and be like, I'm looking for a relationship, but I met this girl and I want to be with her, you know what I mean? Like or I want to be with him, you know what I mean? Because that applies on, you know, for both on both sides. Like, I want to be with this person. This person like has things going on. I feel like if I just with them, like that positivity is going to, like, you know, spill on me a little bit, and then like they just elevate my life in so many ways because they're interesting and they got things going on. So all these people who potentially just like would only want one thing, like meet a person like that and be like, oh, I want more with this specific person. I can say that to you because that happened to me. I didn't wake up and say like, I'm looking for a relationship, but then you meet someone like, oh, I just want more of this. Like, I just want to get to know this person more. I want to spend more time with this specific person, right? Whether I'm even intentionally thinking that this is what potentially going to lead to certain things, whether that's a long-term relationship or a marriage or whatever, that's not how, you know, I was thinking, and I know a lot of people are not thinking like that either, but I just knew that I wanted to spend more time with this specific person because there's all of these things. Look, we can talk about business opportunities together. We have hobbies that we share and interests that we share, and they're positive, which is great because my life and just like everybody else's, we feel like there's too much negativity sometimes, you know, there's stress, there's this, but now I'm meeting them like, I like this. I want more of that.
Yeah. I think also like, it's important to say like, when we're looking at people and we're like, oh, I want more of that, it's also really important to be like, do I also embody that myself? Because
Absolutely.
I think it's super, what I see with some of my clients is, let's say they're not random, they're not organized as a person, or they're not motivated, or they don't really like put themselves out there. And then they sometimes see qualities and traits that they don't have in someone else. And they go, maybe this person will help me get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one part that I think is difficult about that is that if you don't have it and you're hoping that you'll get it from someone else, that you're not necessarily working on it yourself. You're just hoping that this person will hold your hand and walk you through the path, and like, maybe they'll make me more extroverted, and maybe they'll
but just so
help
that other person is looking for the same things too. You know what I mean? Like, say if I'm organized, I'm like, oh wow, like, you know, then they're going to look at, you know, like at me as well. If they're super organized, they're going to be like, oh, I want someone who's also, if I'm very entrepreneurial, or and it doesn't have to be like a good quality. Like, some people are like, oh, I love the fact that you just have a 9-to-5 and a work-life balance. And that's, you know what I mean? And that's going to be great. So I'm looking at you, I'm like, oh, she has a great work-life balance. She's going to be looking at me and looking for the exact same qualities. That's what she's going to want as well, and vice versa. So it's not, so you need to come up with the same stuff so I can see and then appreciate, because otherwise it's probably not going to work for them.
Yeah,
you know, because they're going to be like, well, all right, well, I'm entrepreneurial, I'm this, I'm that, I love tennis, and you don't like all these things, well, or you don't show, or you're not currently are doing all of these things, then why would I want to spend time with you? Why would I want?
At that point, it becomes like, I'm trying to elevate you.
Yeah.
So like, what we sometimes see is like, on either end, like, let's say you have all these things going on for you, and then you see someone who doesn't have it, and you want to hold their hand and pick them up and bring them up with you, which I think sometimes can be a problem. And that's like a different thing. Is I had a client who, she, you know, was doing everything for herself. You know, she was independent. She had her own place. She was making her own money. She had different streams of income, and she was constantly just taking care of herself and her friends and her family. She was filling all her cups, and she was meeting partners where they didn't necessarily have those things going for themselves. They were, you know, kind of had a job, didn't really have much of a friend group that they were like putting effort into. They didn't really put effort into their families or their hobbies or anything like that. And this my client would constantly try to pull them up with her and motivate them and be like, well, look at my life. And if you see my life and you love me, then like you'll do these things. I'll show you how to do these things. And she was getting drained because she was trying to constantly make them into something that they weren't doing for themselves, which I think goes back to the you're trying to be the protector or the survivor. Like you're trying to what is the word? Completely forgot. The fixer, the healer, whatever. And whenever you try to do that, you will get exhausted, and then you will keep meeting people that will want to take that energy from you because you're giving it to them. If you're constantly giving people like, let me take care of you, let me always do things for you, let me elevate you. If you do that too much and you're giving it out for free, especially in the beginning, people will eat that up. They will stay, they will love it because you're giving it to them. But you have to kind of look at it as like, do they have those things themselves first? And are they picking themselves up as well? Because it's not my job to pick someone up and elevate them. It's their job to be like, I think I have to do this and I'm going to do it. And these are the steps that I'm going to take to do it on their own before you go and handicap them and try to do it for them, So that's just one thing that I noticed. But going back to the point that you made earlier of having that fulfilled like life aside from a relationship so that you are not just making it your everything. I remember when I was moving to a different town, I didn't have a single friend in that town. And I, was in a lot of ways just, I'm a very social person, but I wasn't really making connections. I wasn't pushing myself to kind of go out there and meet people friend wise or anything. And when I was, getting on the dating apps, I remembered that old brain Arrezo was attaching myself to wanting that second date and wanting that person to text me. And it was like, I'd go about my day, but I'd be like, oh, why haven't I heard from them? And it was because I didn't have a lot going on and I wasn't really taking care of like fulfilling my own life. And I didn't realize why I was so infatuated. And for a while there, I was like, am I infatuated because they're actually like, I'm in love with them or I actually want to be with them? And then looking back on it now, I'm like, I was infatuated because I didn't really take care of the things for myself. I wasn't doing things for me every day. I was kind of waking up in hopes that like this person would ask to hang out with me or this person would plan a date on the weekend. And it was that moment where I realized like, I have to do those things for myself aside from wanting this person to come in. And I think another point to add to that was, carrying the fantasy of who you think someone is in the beginning based off of some of the things that they've said to you or how sweet they are, or one or two dates that you've gone on, painting this image that the life you want to have with them and how that would look like. I think that's like a huge thing that I know I did when I was younger. And I'm sure a lot of my clients and your clients have done where, you meet someone, they have these great qualities. And then you're like, oh, imagine this life that I could have with them and how great it could be. Like we both love working out and we both love eating healthy. Like we could be that couple. And then you start painting this like great like story in your head without really seeing like, do our values align? Like, are we truly as similar, as I think we are when it comes to like handling conflicts and then like bigger things, but no, it's the story. It's like, I have this image and that's why I want them really badly.
Yeah, you say that story. Like this is me. Like I'm that guy. Like I was that guy for a very long time. When I was, and some women like refuse to believe that like men do that, but like we absolutely do. Where it's like we create that stories too. Like we were like, oh, like she'd be great, and like look at this, and like look at that, and like this, and like I barely, started to get to know her. And that's where like the boundaries really come, into hand. Like one of the things that I personally struggle with, and like that's an example of like one very simple boundary that I implemented that already allowed me to like substantially just elevate my love life and just allow me to, create a little bit of that, change the perspective a little bit from going from someone who is just like hoping, or waiting to be chosen as a romantic partner to like actually like choosing your romantic partners. And that was just like creating very simple boundaries. Like for me, for example, it was like we talked about a little bit earlier about like, seeing them on a regular basis, and consistency, right? And one of the things that I started doing is I said to myself, how about like, okay, so we don't owe each other anything. This is just the beginning. We don't have to see each other every day. We don't have to like, but let me just create like a very basic rule of thumb for myself. And this like actually became something that I now work on with clients, and that is once a week. So like once a week, we have to like, how do I know if this is going in the right direction? How do I know if this person is, is interested in and potentially some of the same things that I'm interested in? Is just starting with, and it's like one of the boundaries is like once a week. So I want to see, like maybe not like on the first week or whatever, but like as we start dating each other. So instead, like I've met you 3 months ago. So I'm looking back right now and I'm like, okay, how long have you been? Like 3 months. How many times? And I would literally like put it on my calendar, like when we went on dates. So I would know. And I'm like, okay, so in these 3 months, we went on 2 dates. If that's the case, right, then I would just stop putting effort in this, and I would potentially put that go take that effort from you and put it onto someone else, because I know that this is probably not going to be it, regardless of how beautiful, successful, how good she is on paper, and all of these things. I just stop putting effort here and I put it somewhere else, regardless of how I felt about her. And that's just once a week. If I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, so listen, we skipped a week here and there. Like, she had something, I had something, I was on vacation, she went and she had a family thing or she had a work thing. Okay, that's fine. But over the past 3 months, we've seen each other, I don't know, 10 times. So more or less we've seen, okay, so now I'm going to continue investing in this potential, relationship, and just continue seeing where this goes. Because at the very least, I see that there's an effort there. She wants to continue getting to know me just as much, as I'm, trying to get to know her. And these very simple like rule of thumbs that I've created for myself just to be able to navigate, allowed me to like disconnect from like the emotional person that I am, and I'm a human being, just, and into a little bit more of just like implementing a little bit more of that strategy. And this is something that I really want to say in this conversation, because a lot of people feel like if I'm putting myself out there in the dating world and I'm a good person, right, and I have good intentions, then that's really all it takes. And that's something I disagree with highly, because I know that from my personal experience. I always considered myself to be a good person, and I always considered myself to go out there and look for genuine, real connections and explore, and treat people the way I want to be treated as well. Yet I was consistently not getting what I want. I was consistently getting hurt. And it came down to really me realizing that there are certain things that I'm doing or not doing. Again, and it's kind of like it does a whole 360 with our beginning of our conversation. There were things that I was doing. I was not putting myself out the right way. I was not maybe meeting people at the right places, or doing or saying certain things on the first day. Because again, you mentioned that earlier. If I go out there and I was like, let me just wear my heart on my sleeve and just tell people right away that I'm looking for a relationship. You know what I mean? And people justify that to themselves all the time, just like I did as well, because I'm like, well, what's wrong with what I'm doing? I'm being genuine. I'm being honest. I'm being, truthful. Like, what's wrong with that? Isn't that what dating and like interpersonal relationships are supposed to be all about? And I've discovered that the answer is no, because it's not necessarily about just being transparent. Transparency is not always the right way, especially with people we're just barely starting to get to know. Because these things that, there's the way how we think, that we put these things out, and there is and how they're being perceived is a completely different thing. When somebody comes to me on this first date right now, and I just hear them say, okay, are you ready for a serious relationship? Are you looking for something serious? I'm looking for something serious. I'm hearing, right? I'm desperately trying to just change my, status. I am desperately, I do not like my current lifestyle or life right now, or like what I'm doing and everything that's going on in my life. And that's such a big thing that I'm just rushing, and I will just jump on any opportunity with anyone who's potentially just willing to say yes and want to engage. That's what I'm hearing. And that is not attractive to me. And just like it's not attractive to most people who hear that or feel that, desperate and energy and desperation. I feel like if there's one thing that you just universally, both men and women and just like different types of people is a universal like most unattractive trait is it would be that desperation. If somebody comes in and like I just people tend to run away right off the bat, you know what I mean? So that's, again, just like the intentions are not everything. Just because I think that if I'm putting myself out there and I'm a good person and I'm trying to look for something real and genuine, that does not necessarily mean, because people hear that all the time. Like, Lion, how does that? What you saying that you attract what you put out there? Yet I'm a good person, but I'm attracting these jerks. And I'm like, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? If you're a person that shows up without boundaries, I'm not going to attract other people who don't have boundaries. I'm probably more likely to attract people who just, like run all over me. You know what I mean? And just do that's it's not because I'm showing up this way that I'm going to get people who are exactly showing up the exact same way. But based on how I show up, I will attract certain types of behavior. So if
Yeah.
I show up negative, I'm going to attract people who are, chances are going to manipulate me or are going to give me the, if I'm going to show up positive, I'm going to attract, you know what I mean? It's people that also, so there, you know what I mean? It's a lot of it is about a little bit of that strategy. People, and this is kind of like what I wanted to say. People have, I made that video a little while ago. People have like this negative connotation when they hear the word game when it comes to dating. Like, oh, why play all these games? Like, I don't know if you get that on your channel. Why do I make this complicated? I like you, you like me, which doesn't work like that. There is a game in the sense that there is a certain strategy that we could adjust and then develop over time to make sure that we're getting what we want, whether that's in dating situations, whether it's within our careers, within our businesses, within our friendships, or any other, even fitness. You know, there's certain things that we're going to do that are going to get us closer to our goals, and there's going to be other things that, although our intentions might be positive and good and pure, are going to hinder us and hold us back from getting these results.
Right. I think it's important that if, like, for someone to go on a date or someone who wants something serious, opposed to saying like, okay, this is what I want and this is what I'm looking for, what are your thoughts? Where are you at? The middle ground for that, if that's what you're looking for, is to look at what their actions and their words tell you over time. And
over time is
over time is like the big word. Is like, opposed to the first few dates. It's like, look at the first few dates as, this is nice. I like this. They're taking me out on dates. This is great. That is not the version of them that they are going to be in the relationship with you. That is the honeymoon stage. Like, if you meet someone, everyone's going to put their best foot forward. Yep. So opposed to looking at that and being like, oh, you know, what are you looking for? Or looking at their actions and be like, but they're putting a lot of time. That means they want something serious. No. Words and actions have to go together, not one above the other. I always say they have to go together, because I can have a client where, you know, they're going on a few dates and they're like, oh, this person is saying all the right stuff. It sounds like they want something with me. Their words are telling me that they want something with me. No. Okay, over time, do their actions also show that by how much effort they're putting into it? Then that means words and actions are going together. Great. But if, let's say, their actions are showing you that they're constantly getting, you know, wanting your attention, all this stuff, but then you ask them 3 months down the line, what is it that you're looking for? And they go, oh, I don't know if I can do something serious. For those 3 months, you just assume that their actions were telling you that they wanted something, but their words weren't following through with that. So you have to just kind of like gauge it. I always think that by month 2 or 3, you have an idea. If you're really spending time with this person, you have more of an idea of like where they stand, and also with you.
Yeah, but they also know where they stand way more than they knew where they stood 3 months ago, because they did not know where they stood with you, because a lot of it has to do with you specifically. You know what I mean? It's like, a client actually made that example the other time, and she's like, my son does that to me when he comes to visit, and I ask him like, oh, are you hungry? You know, he's going to go straight to the kitchen and he's going to look what I made first. So if I made meatloaf, he's not hungry. But if I made, I don't know, whatever, tacos or something that he likes, then he is hungry. And that's, you know, true for dating situations as well. Like, you asked me if I'm looking for a relationship. I'm looking at you and I'm like, oh, she's cute, she's pretty. I want to say yes, because I know that that's what you want to hear right now. And I want to, like, you know, but 3 months from now, that could change one way or the other. You know, as I'm getting to know you, I'm like, oh, we have a lot of things in common. We don't have a lot of things in common. We want the same things. We don't want the same things. I'm finding all of these things about, you know what I mean? And now my answer is going to be sometimes very different. Yeah, there are some people out there who are, that's not going to change. And if they weren't looking, they're not looking. But I know for a fact, most people, it really is going to be very dependent. And whether or not somebody's looking for a relationship in principle, to me, is like, it's irrelevant information to me. Like, what does that matter? If this girl is looking for a relationship but not with me, like, does it really matter? Like, should it have any influence or any sort of say of how I'm going to show up with her? It shouldn't, you know, because it needs to be specifically with me. But in order for her to make that decision and for me to make that decision, we just, like you said, the overtime is super important. We just need to spend enough time with each other.
I think that's where some people kind of get fearful, is because they're thinking, oh, well, what if this person doesn't choose me? So I have to show up as this amazing human being that puts all this time and effort and does so much for them and showers them with love. And in fact, like, I feel like some people get worried in the beginning and put a lot out there in hopes that this person will choose them, because they're like, I want you to choose me, so I'm going to do whatever I have to get that. So what would you say in situations like that?
Well, I feel like again, that's coming from a place of just you're trying to be chosen rather than taking the time to choose. I'm not really concerned about whether or not you're looking for a relationship. If it's been like the first couple of dates, I'm more concerned whether or not I feel like I'm seeing you as a person that I would want to be in a relationship with. How you feel about me at this point is honestly irrelevant. The only thing that I would be looking for is that consistency factor. Are you even putting time and effort in order to see me once a week? That's what I want to see at this point. You know what I mean? To me, like texting and all that stuff, that's so, low effort. Like I want to see like, and we don't have to go on like fancy dates, but like, are you willing to come on and have coffee with me at Starbucks? Like, doesn't even have to be anything fancy. Once a week, can we do that? And then maybe watch a movie one time. Maybe go to, I don't know, take a walk in the park. Go to, I don't know, some kind of an event. Whatever. Go hiking. One weekend together. That's what I want to see. If we're putting enough effort in that, then I feel like you're in the right place. I don't know, like let's say I know and nothing else about you. I know that for the time being, if it's been like the first couple of months, you're in the right place as far as I'm concerned. You're doing what I need you to do in order for me to continue doing this. That's all I need from you is the willingness to participate. Yes, I'm paying attention to certain red flags. Like let's say you just announce, out of nowhere, and you just like, hey, by the way, I will never want a relationship with you. Okay, like, but most of the time that's not what happens. You know what I mean? Like the, so if that's not there, if I don't see like really huge red flags that are telling me that you either are looking for very different things that I'm looking for, or signs of disrespect, or just like signs of like you're not being the type of person that I even feel like I would want to connect with, just certain things that I feel like won't give us that compatibility factor. Like we have very different values, we value different things, or we have very different beliefs, whether that's religious, political, because all these things might, about kids, about family, about like where we want to live.
What would you say in situations where the person is not opening up about all these topics and they're just kind of like shut off?
No, like I said, I am looking for signs that they're like just like voluntarily telling me that they're not. But if it's the first couple of weeks, I'm not probing. I'm not asking. I am not even, I don't care. You know what I mean? At this point, all I want to see is like, listen, if I want to see whether or not you are, let's say I have, I don't know, like family is something very important to me. Like, let's say like that's one of the values that I hold dear, and I'm looking for people who also have that same value because that's important to me. I want a big family. I had a big family, my relationship with my family. I'm looking for people who understand that, people who would, integrate it and have these values as well. Let's say that that's something that's really, really important for me. One of the things that are really, really important for me. What do you think is better? If I just straight up ask you, hey, Arrezo, are you someone who has family? No, that's probably, or I just pay attention. I'm like, okay, so you told me like last weekend you're spending time with your brother and you guys are going with his wife and blah, 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 and the kids and you guys, and this weekend you're inviting me to your family barbecue. And, the weekend after you're flying to whatever, San Diego to meet with your cousin who you haven't seen, in the past 6 months because you're blah, blah, blah. And you have like a thing that you do every year around Christmas where you know what I mean? That's how I know that these families, or you're telling me these stories about how much you hate your mother because blah, 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 and you haven't spoken to her in 7 years and blah, 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 and you've never met your dad. And okay, so I feel like, yeah, maybe the family thing is not a big thing, but voluntarily, these things will come up in conversation. We spend enough time with each other. These things will come up. You know what I mean?
I love how you just kind of put it that way, because I think that's a question that a lot of people have is what if, like, how will I know if this person has the same values as me? How will I know? Like, should I ask these questions? Should I pull it out? But I think it's really important just to see like the stories they tell you. If you're saying that you value, having a business and pushing yourself to like have a career and like you're motivated and driven as an entrepreneur, and let's say that's something that you really value as someone who's driven in anything that they do, then instead of asking, like interview questions, it's like over time, what does this person do with their day to day? Do they wake up and are they
what are you up to? Nothing. I'm come back from work. I hate my job. My boss is blah blah blah, and I hate him. And I'm just like really just watching Netflix as I'm trying to like get my mind off of work, and that happens again and again. What are you doing with your weekend? Oh, I don't know. I'm probably gonna go out and we're gonna like go hang out with some friends, blah blah. Okay, so obviously the entrepreneurial thing, if you're not doing it on your weekends, if you're not doing it on your evenings, is not a huge part of your life. Hey, I'm not saying it's a bad or good thing, but if that's something I'm looking for, that's obviously not there. You know what I mean? And I can tell that just based on our conversations about nothing, about literally, hey, how you doing? What's up? What are you up to? I will find that out. And that's way more effective because they don't feel like they're being interviewed. They don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer. When I call you and I say, hey, Arrezo, What are you up to? You don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer here. But if I ask you, hey, so are you an entrepreneurial person? What do you think I want to hear? Do you know what I mean? So people will likely, if you find me attractive and you kind of want to show me the good side, which people tend to do, what are you going to tell me? Oh yeah, well, I definitely, think I'm asking you, hey, so do you want to have kids? You kind of know that there's a certain answer that you know what I mean? Like there's a specific answer that they want to hear. And based on what you kind of found out about them so far, you'll tell them what they want to hear. Like, oh yeah, I'm definitely looking, for kids at some point with the right person.
Right. Yeah.
But then down the line, let's say we go to a party somewhere and there's like a whole bunch of kids. I will just blurb it out and be like, oh, I fucking hate these little things. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why anybody would. That's way more valuable in terms of information than asking that, like you said, like, an interview question where I'm just like being, and people think that they save time, but it actually costs them more time because they're going to hear probably not, you know what I mean? Like, they're not going to hear the right answers, or they're not going to hear the real answers. And again, I just want to say one thing. This is not because people are liars in a negative. This is just what we human beings tend to do. You do that. I do that. Everybody who's watching it to a certain extent does that. You know what I mean? When we meet someone and we want to be liked, and this is just what we do as human beings, we want to be liked. We want to be appreciated. We want somebody to ask us on a second date, even if we have no intentions of going. Yes or no? Right? We want that person to be like, I want to go out with you again, even if we are already decided that I never want to see this guy again. You know what I mean? So we want that. So we tend to automatically just do and say the things that will get us there, that will get us to be liked. And so if somebody asks me that question, I probably won't just, if I know that you're looking for an answer like, oh yeah, I'm definitely like want to have kids, or I'm definitely like love family values, or I'm entrepreneurial, or whatever that, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, because that's going to create a more positive experience and a better conversation. And I feel like you're going to open up to me more, and you're going to smile instead of frown. And I want to see that because I want to be liked by you.
Right.
So not people, you know what I mean? Like, we need to strip that whole idea that that's because people are liars or manipulators and it's coming. Yeah, there are some people, like there's asshole men, just like there are asshole women out there. That's out there. Sure. But the majority of people are like you and I. They're people who, with good intentions, who just want to find the right person for them. And that's how we navigate. And we have to then create that strategy that will allow us to, you know what I mean, to approach dating the right way. Just like there's a right and wrong way to approach sports. There's certain things that are going to make you a better skier, and there's a strategy of how to train that, and to become that. Just because you want to be a better doesn't necessarily will make you. Just because you get on skis and you do the same thing over and over and over again, chances are if you do, you're not going to learn. You know what I mean? So it's about being humble enough to know that, oh, there is a way that I can potentially adjust myself, how I show up on the first date, on the second date, the conversations that I have. What do I exchange in terms of text messaging? How often do I, text message? Where do I even create these opportunities? How do I utilize, like you mentioned, online dating? What do I put in my profile? The type of pictures that I put. All of that is important information, and that creates a certain type of experience. What about offline dating? Where do I meet people that allow, all of these things? If I just adjust myself a little bit, then I create, a way that allows me to get closer to my goals.
Yeah. So that everything that you just said reminded me of like my last relationship, where I kind of like not overly, but in a sense did just show exactly who I am right away. This is where I'm at. This is who I am. This is what I'm looking for. And it was with, someone that I had known from college, and, in a lot of ways, everything that I was saying, they were like mirroring that. They were mirroring my energy in the beginning. And I didn't realize this at first. Everything that I said I liked, and everything that I was looking for my future, and all the stories I was saying, they were infatuated with that. And they're like, I want this. I'm not there yet, but I want this. That this is what she's striving for. And I enjoy that. And I think me doing that, I was kind of like self-sabotaging myself in a sense, because this person was just telling me exactly what I wanted to hear. And going into the relationship, I was like, oh great, we're on the same page, like we want the same things, like this is amazing, like they're telling me everything I want to hear. And I just it went over my head. And I didn't realize that in the beginning, the mistake that I had that I needed to work on was to not overly tell this new person what I'm looking for, where I'm at, what my future is, like what I want, and all this stuff, because that's what I was doing. I was painting this also this future that I could have with them, because they were telling me what I wanted to hear. And it ended up being a relationship of a year where they were trying really hard to please me, and try to show up as that person for me. And it was kind of like diminishing who they were. And I didn't know for the longest time because I was like, yeah, we're the same. Like, you know, we want the same things, but they weren't showing up as themselves. And I think that that's where our biggest downfall was for so long. I was like, we're the same person. And I wasn't noticing, you know, how it was affecting them because they were trying really hard to like show up as the person they said that they were gonna be in the beginning. And I was holding on to that version of them in my head, and it put like this high expectation. And I think the lesson that I learned from that going into, you know, future relationships and where I'm at now, currently in my relationship, is I didn't allow myself to like, this is what I want and this is what I'm looking for and like this is what I need you to have, like kind of giving that checklist to the person right away. I was just like, I'm ready for an experience. I know my boundaries. I'm going to go into it excited. I don't need to have these serious conversations with you. I just want to show you who you are. And, you know, for a while there after my last partner, I did meet people that were telling me what I wanted to hear that weren't actually ready, but I stopped telling them like, well, I want this and I want that. Whenever I would hear the love bombing in a sense, because it's the beginning, we all do it, I would just kind of be like, okay, I like that. In my head, I'd be like, let's see how serious they really are. Like, you know, they say that they want these things. They say that they actually enjoy these things. Let's see how their actions show up with that over time. And when I started to have that mindset of the like over time, don't just like dive head first, I had different outcomes that were coming for me. And I was really, really shocked by just like me telling myself, I'm not going to accept I want you so badly and I want a future and I want this and I want that. I didn't accept those words. I was just like, okay, you say that. Let's just see over time. Let's set the appropriate boundaries that worked for me, which was I cannot see someone every single day. I cannot text someone every single day and like be with someone every day because I have other things going for me now. Kind of like what you said earlier. I have that abundant life. And then on top of it, I don't want to make one person my everything. I think it's important to have a lot of stuff that you care about. So now when I came into the dating world after my last relationship, I made sure I had those things that were going for me. And I made sure that I wasn't just like easy accessible to the person whenever they need the attention, because old Arrezo is still in there. You know, we all have like our old versions of ourselves. Old me always wanted, you know, to have fun and go do things and go on adventures and have memories and like be super like, let's go. And I realized like, because I'm like that, I cannot do that in dating right away. You got to just take it slow. You got to, you know, one date a week. And I implemented those boundaries and it really, really gave me a different outcome. So I'm actually happy that you had brought that up because everyone does show up with like, yep, this is who I am and I want this. And you say you want this, I'm going to tell you that I want this too. So that was the downfall of my last relationship.
I'm not trying to like pry into your life, and this is, if that's not something that you want to talk about, that's completely fine as well. But I'm just curious, like, at what point did you realize then that this was like not it? You know, like at what point did you actually like, oh, like I think that I've been just like kind of telling myself that this person was this way and he wasn't really that. And like, at what point, like, was there like a specific thing that they did or said, or was just like a certain you know, a timeline, you know, kind of thing that you're like, oh, like a year in, you decided that that's when I need to make the decision? How did you know?
So it was a long distance relationship, and I'm a huge advocate.
Oh, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm a huge advocate for never doing that.
No. I'm a huge advocate that it could work for some people. You know, it really depends. Okay. I'm the type of person where I now really do value my own time, my own quality time by myself. And I think in the beginning, I, you know, again, love, what is it? The love glasses were on. So it was really hard for me to see, you know, is this right for me or not? And I went to it, they said everything that they wanted to, and they kind of got, you know, got me where they wanted it. I think after month 2 or 3, I had this gut feeling. I feel like we all have a gut feeling. By month 2 or 3, it was like, you know, this person's not actually, they don't actually want exactly what you want. They're telling you what you want. And it was like that gut feeling it never went away. No matter how many times I felt like I needed to communicate with them, like, hey, you know, like where are you actually at? You know, what is it actually that you want? I noticed that it was like that gut feeling was still there. So after month 2 or 3, I gave myself 3 to 4 months with this long distance relationship just to see how this person actually shows up. So like that was the time I was willing to invest, because there was other things that I was like, we align in all these other ways. I'm willing to give this, you know, maybe even 6 more months to see where it goes. And I think that that's different for everyone else and everyone else's situation. But for me, that's what I did. And after those 6 months, you know, I would reflect, what do I need to work on? What do they need to work on? Where are we going wrong? And I would do those things. But I did realize that this person, the initial thought that I had at month 2 that gut feeling I had was this person is just telling you what you want to hear. So, after that, we both parted ways and we realized like we don't want the same things. We're just trying to please the other person. So I knew I wanted to invest and see if that could change. And I think sometimes it can for people and sometimes it can't.
Yeah. And I think that's what, to me, like the whole thing about like long distance is because it's so much more difficult to do that. Um, 'Cause I honestly believe that the only real way to really get to know someone is to, sit in the same room with them, like breathe the same air. Because you can really tell so much more where, because like right now, like I feel, and I'm sure you as well, like there's a certain level of just like we're at ease because we're not, like I can do this right now and this is over. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I can just, and although I'm not going to do it, and I'm not even considering that I could do that, but it's there. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm texting you, I automatically like become a little bit different than I would really be. But if I'm sitting with you in person, you can read this, and even video chats, they don't do it justice at all. Like, I can tell if I talk about certain things, and I don't even need to be like a psychologist or anything to like see these things and feel these things, but how you, let's just like your body language, how you respond. Did I just lose your eye contact for like a split second when I mentioned a certain topic? Where I just said, oh, my cousin's kids, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, and that's kind of like I lost you there for like a split second. I can feel, and over time, that I don't need to be like an expert, but over time, as we're having these types of conversations in person, right, I'm learning so much about you, and I'm filling in the blanks slowly. And I'm really learning like firsthand these things, like we talk about spending time with your family and this, how you talk about these things. You know what I mean? Like on a text message, like, yeah, I'm going to go see my mom, blah, blah. In person, it could be very different. Oh, I'm going to see my mom again. And like, like this whole
Yeah.
you can sense and read so much between the lines. And that's why I really feel like that long distance really, to me, I and the reason why I'm not like a huge fan is like, not only that I'm work with a lot of people who are, and like it's just like I've seen like in terms of like the numbers, I've seen the success rate and it's not great, but also from personal experience, because I tried to make it work more than once, and that just like always kind of tends to be like the same barrier. And that is, again, and like you said, like it's very easy to create our own impressions of who they are just based on some words that we see or like a very quick conversations, because at the end of the day, we're like leading and living these very different lives on like separate ends for the most part. So I said to myself, long distance to me from now on is never going to be about a distance anymore. I don't care whether it's like, on a different continent or like a couple of houses down the road. It's going to be about like, how often do we see each other? So that same approach that I said to myself once a week still applies. And that's honestly, like it saved not only me so much time, but I feel like a lot of my clients so much time. I can see you once a week. People, some like, because also like the distance thing, as far as I found, is like it's very different for different people. Like some people like commute to work for like an hour and a half each way, or like 2 hours each way. Every day, and they don't consider that long. Some people like, 30 minutes like long distance for them.
That's why I go back to like, I think long distance works for some people and it doesn't for other. If you know that it doesn't work for you, and you're that type of person where it's like, this is just not, I've tried it, I know how I feel, it doesn't work for me, then it's important to like know that that's a boundary that I don't necessarily know if I can do, but like long distance. For other people, it's like, this is doable. If there's like if we're going to like close that gap at some point. If you're doing long distance and neither person wants to move and they don't have any intention of moving ever, and it's like we're going to stay in our own worlds and we're not changing that, and that can be very difficult. But if you're like, okay, maybe this is just like short term, maybe just for the next year or the next 2 years, like we just kind of have to go through this, and like that you can make it work. I do have couples that do it, and I do think it's possible to get past it. It's just both people have to put in that effort and know what it's going to take to do it. And that's like a whole different topic for a different day of like pros and cons on long distance. But just to kind of like go back to what we were saying earlier, was that for me, I did tell this person right away, like what I was looking for. And I think that's where I had my biggest downfall and had to realize like, you don't necessarily need to put that out there. Just kind of see how this person shows up, and that will let are they actually the same way that you are? Do they value?
You don't tell them that they're not going to do it because you told them, you know what I mean? Like, so they're going to have no choice but to show you the real, because they don't know what you're expecting. They don't know what you want. So they're not, they can't tell you and just give that to you. So you get that firsthand, truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think there was another was there anything else specific? I feel like there was like few more, or yeah, I guess I'll let you
I
start
mean,
off.
I think that we did like a full round. Like what really wanted to again come up with this conversation, and then feel free to add anything if you want. But I feel like again, it's really important for us to. My message always stems from like taking accountability, like and like understanding that first of all, like I am I told you this earlier, like accountability to me is like a double-edged sword. Like on the one hand, it's like very scary, because we have to accept the fact that, if something is not going well, it's like my quote unquote fault. You know what I mean? Because but on the other side of that is that I can also change that. It empowers me to say that, oh, I need to look within myself and I can change that reality. So if I'm living currently like, or my relationships, or I'm not where I want to be in, whether in my dating life, my relationships, my love life, or any other area of my life, it really comes down to me. So like you said, with your schooling or whatever, like it comes down to me. Like I just need to adjust how I do. You could have sat there and be like, oh, universities these days just don't want blah blah blah, or it's because I'm a woman, or if it's because of this, or it's because of that. There's so many reasons that we tend to, and misery loves company. And I see that in my comment section, like
Yeah.
very 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 clearly when someone says like, something like that, we're like, oh yeah, it's because men these days, they just don't want that, or it's because dating in nowadays is just too hard. And there's people who create content like that, and they're pretty successful because again, misery loves company. So that kind of stuff is like spreading like wildfire. Somebody says like dating is horrible these days, oh, there's going to be plenty of people that are going to jump on board. Because if I'm miserable about that, if I'm anxious about that, if if I have a bad taste in my mouth about dating, oh, I'm going to jump on board because it feels good to know that other people are struggling with that too, and it's not just
Yeah.
me. There's a saying. There's like somebody told me that the other day. There's like a Russian proverb that says, the problem is not the fact that how did it go? Sorry, I don't want to butcher it, but the problem is not that your cow died, but that the neighbor's cow is still alive. You know what I mean? That they're still okay, and I'm not. Like I don't have. So that's what people feel like. It's not like they're going to, before they look at the things that they need to do in order to like better their lives in certain ways, they're just going to first start by looking at other people that are struggling with the same thing. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
see, she's struggling with that as well. It's because it's impossible. It's because men are terrible. It's because nobody wants relationships. It's because of dating apps. It's because of online dating. It's because of whatever, like so many
Yeah.
reasons, because of social media.
Yeah.
So like so it really comes down to like taking accountability and saying, hey, I mean, I can see evidence out there in my life, whether that's my parents, my friends, my brother who's married, my sister, my neighbor John, my whatever. Look, there are people out there who are happy, in relationships, or at least they seem to be, like, you know what I mean, like in relationships, and they have what I, or they seem to have what I, want as well. So there are evidence for that. So that means that it exists. So I just need to like know what I need to do and align myself. And sometimes being a good person or having good intentions, because we all, if you think about it, like I'm gonna bet that not 99, 100% of people who are going to be watching this video are going to consider themselves to be good people. Right, and with good intentions. Nobody, like, very rarely do people like, I'm a bad person. No, like we all think of ourselves like as good people with good intentions. We want real good things, and we have genuine, like pure intentions. We all think that.
Yeah. There's this quote, I don't necessarily remember, I may butcher it, but my brother was telling me there's a wolf and he he can take the lightness or he can take the darkness. Which one does he feed?
Right.
And it was whichever one you take and you feed that one, that's the thing that you're going to get. I forgot how it goes, but pretty much like stating, if you focus on the negative gets bigger. If you focus on the positive gets bigger. Of course, there are going to be things that happen in our lives where you can't just always be happy bappy, like everything is great. The difficulty comes into our lives. But if you do focus on the story that you tell yourself that is negative, then you're going to continue to go with that story, and that's the thing that you're going to feed. So you'll keep looking at life with like this negative perspective.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's the problem that a lot of people just kind of miss. It's like, okay, so let's say you're salty about dating, or you're, the past person you dated maybe didn't treat you wow, whatever, for a variety of different reasons, ghosted you. Yeah. Let's say that happens. Let's say the last two people did that. Beyond the fact that maybe there's certain things or conversations or your approach that you might need to change. Maybe these people were assholes. Let's say that that's true. All right. Now, if you go out there and you just, embody that energy right now, you're going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the person's going to connect with you and you're like, you're not one of those ghosters, are you? You're not one of those. No, no, no. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to get ghosted. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They're going to want to run away as far as possible from you, because that negativity is then becomes the number one thing that's holding you back at this point. And that's something
Or
that's, go ahead.
Or even like another side to that is like you say, oh, you're not one of those ghosters, and you're kind of in your head, you have like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Is this person going to ghost me? You're so fearful that it's going to happen, that when it does, because I guarantee you it will happen at one point. Like, people just sometimes don't want exactly what you want. You're going to meet bad apples. So when that next person ghosts you, you're going to be like, see, I told you. I told you all people are going to ghost. Look, it just keeps happening. And it's like the minute that it happens, you're like, oh, you hold on. That's the story you're running with. Like, if I could sit here and tell you all about my experiences, I've had people walk away. I've had people not be on the same level as me. And instead of feeding that story of like, see, dating sucks, I fed the other side, which is change your boundaries and realize that it's going to happen. When it happens, don't be mad that it happened. Accept it that it has. Be positive that that's just getting you one step closer to the right person. Because why would you want to date someone who couldn't give you what you wanted? And for me, for example, like it was someone who just like wasn't able to put time into things, just was constantly busy, had a lot going on in their lives. And instead of me being so mad that they couldn't give me that attention, I was like, well, okay, that's fine, because I don't want someone in my life that is not able to give me this. So why do I want to hold on to you so badly if you're not able to do it? It's like, I would rather you leave and not waste my time than for me to stay and hope that you give me more. And it's really important to feed the positive side, which is like, great, I'm wasting less of my time with someone that's not able to show up. What I really wanted was someone that can show up. So this is pushing me toward that direction opposed to the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. I agree with everything that you said, because we essentially are going to create our own realities. It's not, perspective is like so important, you know what I mean? Because everybody has a different, like the same thing is going to happen, and you and I are going to both look at the exact same thing that's happening, and we're going to see very different things based on our own, you know what I mean, perspective and how we look at things. So there is no like absolute truth, because everything is like based on, again, on our interpretation. There's like what's happening, then there's like how we interpret it, and then that's what, you know what I mean, how it's going to affect our lives. So,
I actually go ahead.
No, please.
I actually had like a funny story that happened. I went to Tulum with my brother and like a few of our friends, and there was a storm that came, and like we were just stuck in our Airbnb. We couldn't go anywhere. And my brother and I have two different ways that we view problems. He views it as like worst case scenario. Like, he'll think of every possible thing that could go wrong, and I think of every possible like thing that could go right. So when we both were in that situation, he was worried, he was anxious, he was like, okay, well, this could happen, and then we could flood, the apartment could get flooded, and then we can't leave, and we don't have phone service, and the showers don't work, and the electricity was gone. Everything was pretty bad, but he was just looking at like, how could it get worse? Throughout that entire week trip, it was okay, but this could get even worse than what it really is. And I every single day would wake up and be like, oh, it's really sunny today. Like the rain's not as bad today. Like, let's go outside and let's go for a walk. Like, let's just like explore. And I'd be like, oh my God, like we got power for 20 minutes. Like, let's like enjoy that, like, and I was just constantly, so at the end of that trip, I was happy. I was laughing. I was in the airplane with my brother, and he was miserable. And I looked over and I was like, it wasn't that, there was things that happened that was out of our control, but it was fun. He was like, it was the worst trip. I hated it. And, it's just interesting to see that both people dealing with the same conflict in the same house were handling it completely different. When he walks out and you ask him, like, how did Tulum go? His first response, I don't want to talk about it. Mine is, oh my God, like I have so many memories. It's just,
1,000%. Even things like, I come back to it again and again. I feel like, but not intentionally in this video, but like I talk about, ghosting, and I posted a video the other day, and I was like, oh, I'm grateful, that somebody ghosts me. I'm like, oh, it's like such a shortcut. I just found out that they're not good for me, and they're not right for me. Like, they're just whatever, it's just like, I understand how the process is to go out there, meet a bunch of people. 99% of these people are not going to work out for whatever reason. One way or the other, they're just not going to work out. And ghosting is just another way of showing me that this is not going to work out. That's all I'm taking from this. You're taking from this something else. You're like, oh, I'm not good enough, or people are horrible, or that he did that to hurt me. He on purpose, purposely did not, or she did not, give me the closure that I need, or like, I'm like, no. I know for a fact I'm going to meet a bunch of people. That's like I'm going into that process knowing that I'm going to meet a bunch of people, and most of them I'm not going to work. It's not going to work out with.
Yeah.
What does it matter how I learn about? You know what I mean? Like it's not like they went and like they hurt me. Like they just stopped talking to me, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like honestly, it's so much easier. I've wasted less time. I'm less frustrated. I have more time right now to dedicate to someone else. I don't have to go through that awkward conversation. There's nothing that they can tell me or do or whatever to like make this any better or less awkward. Or no, I'm like, this is actually great. They save me some time. I'm like, I'm happy that's you know what I mean. Do I prefer maybe sure, maybe, but I mean, does that change anything? Absolutely not. And that's still giving me the exact same result. And that's that perspective. But if I'm getting, if I'm getting more negative and more hurt and more frustrated, and then I go online and I find other people who are also frustrated about that, and that just creates that entire aura around me. And then I put on my Instagram profile, be like, I hate online dating, or I hate and then I go on my profile on, my on Hinge or whatever, and I just like, don't talk to me if you ghost, or like don't do that if you're not looking for something serious. I'm reading that and you're thinking in your head, oh, I'm gonna like weed out all the bad apples. I'm like, no, what you actually are doing is you're eliminating everyone, because everybody's looking at that and be like, oh wow, that's just very negative. Like no one wants to mess with that. And then you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, like you said, see, I knew it. Nobody wants to be in relationships. I was on the dating app for 6 months. Nobody even said hi. Or the guy that did say hi just told me, come over to my house and we'll, you know what I mean? Just do this and then you can leave. That's the, you know what I mean? Like, because that's what you're putting out there. That's what you're going to be experiencing. That's your perspective, then becomes, you know what I mean? Just like your brother, that perspective might become and then create even more of that negativity. And he's like, see, I knew it, like that was Mexico is like the worst place to visit and blah, blah, blah. You should never go back there. We should go somewhere else next year, blah, blah. But here, there you are having the same exact experience, and you're like, oh no, I'd go back there in a heartbeat. Probably go stay at the same freaking resort, because you know what I mean. Like I really like, because of the rain or because of this, I enjoyed more of the indoor facilities, and I really enjoyed the sauna, or I don't know, whatever. And there's certain things I really loved. So
I agree with that. And I think something to add as like maybe a boundary to put in place is, don't go to friends and family. This is maybe just my perspective and what I've experienced with my clients, is don't go to friends and family and like vent about everything that like you're thinking and how you're feeling, because one of two things happens. Your friends and family will feed that anger. So let's say you're like, oh my God, I've been talking to this person and, like they just treated me this way. And like, I cannot believe it. Your friend or family knows one side, and that's your side. Your friend or family is going to be like, wow, that's such a horrible person. Like, don't ever talk to them again. I'm so sorry that they put you through this. And then that's just like feeding this anger that you have of like, yeah, they're the problem. And like your friend and family is going to be like, I'm so sorry. Like, you didn't have to go through this. And again, like sometimes difficult situations happen, but your friend or family only knows one side of it. They don't know how you showed up in it. They don't know how you handled it at all. All they know is what you're telling them. They also don't know what's going on with this other person. So when you go to them and you're like venting and you're expressing like, I hate dating apps, like they're just going to sometimes feed into that as well. Yeah. Or you get the opposite advice from your friends or family being like, okay, maybe you should just never go on dating apps again because it seems like it hasn't been working out for you. And like, it seems like you just keep doing this. So sometimes I think it's just important to take what you say to friends and family, just have a little bit of a boundary, and then also take what they say with a grain of salt, because what they say is going to influence what you do next. Like I had a friend who quite literally told me, stop going on dating apps. It's the worst, because this person didn't have good experiences with dating apps. And they kept telling me, you need to stop doing it. So anytime now I had their voice in the back of my head when a date didn't go well, I'm like, it's because of the dating app. That my friend was right. I knew it, and I like needed to stop doing that, because I was like, wait. That was their experience. Yes, I'm going to have some bad apples. I'm going to experience, but why do I have to tell myself this story that it's because of the dating app? It's not. And I don't necessarily need to blame it on that. Dating is dating. If you meet someone based from a friend, you can still have a bad experience with that, that date, and it doesn't go well, but you can't blame you're not going to blame.
No, because people say, oh, it's only bad people. I'm like, wait a second. I mean, you're on the dating app. You consider yourself to be a good person. You don't think that there's someone from the opposite sex that is also there and also considers himself to be a good person and is looking for what you're looking for? Sure. Right. And like I said, most people are, if I asked anybody watching this, I'm like, hey, do you consider yourself to be a good person with pure and good intentions, and you want something real and you want to connect? And I would say that everybody was watching this would say yes.
Yeah.
Do people feel like they had that experience with you sometimes? No. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that you're not. So again, yes, I agree with you 1,000%. Like how you, and it's not because like she's a bad friend or anything, but we just tend to do that as human beings. Like if I had a bad experience, like kind of want you to also have a bad experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be the only one who had a bad experience, you know? And it's not because I'm a bad friend or I might wish you well, you know, but I mean, like, I would take more comfort in the fact that it's just the app rather than I'm not doing something.
Or yeah, you're trying to save me based off of your experience and you're trying to be like, don't do this. Like it didn't work for me. So it's probably not going to work for you. And you like assume that, you know, we're going to handle it the same way. Another thing that I've noticed is, I think I brought this up earlier. I had a client who was like, I want to meet emotionally available people, but I keep meeting the opposite of that. This person wasn't putting in the effort in the conversations. And the thing that I like, you know, told them was, if you are looking to find genuine connections, show up, ask questions, put effort into the conversations, and actually try. Because if you're going to respond every once a week, or you never respond, or you forget and you wait a month and you're like, oh my God, I didn't see this, or like you wait 5 hours, and you're not really putting in that effort, we're going to lose that interest. It's like, ask questions, get to know the person. You might see something on their profile that's interesting. Ask them how that experience that they went traveling with their cousins went, what are they interested in? And I really do think it needs to be this back and forth for a little while, like truly just getting to know them. Maybe you guys have something common in interest, like whatever, to kind of build that, opposed to just like, well, I said hi, they said hi, and it was dry, so I ignored it. Like, okay, we don't know each other yet. It's gonna be a little bit of like push back for a second, but just if you just kind of drop your ego, drop your guard for a second and be like, how's your day going? How's your job? Like, what is it that you like to do? And just sometimes just like seeing their profile. What are they interested in? Are you interested in similar things? Like, can you guys talk about that? And I think it's really important to again, just like be yourself and put in that effort, because if not, you're going to meet bad apples. And then when you do, you go, oh, well, it's because they weren't trying. It takes two to tango. That's all I'm going to say.
I think that there's definitely a space for maybe a future conversation specifically about like the online dating component. I feel like a lot of people would be very interested in learning a little bit more about some, I don't know, like if it's like tips or tricks, but like specific like rules of thumb or things that we tend to, generally, commonly do that maybe are holding us back from potentially like really creating good connections, healthy connections. Just like you mentioned, like the our ability to just be. I don't know if it's consistent enough, but just like putting that effort enough, to be able to get what we want. And then maybe like we're not doing it because of like the fear of being rejected, or we just don't want to seem too eager, or we want to like, you know what I mean? I don't know if it's like a balance of power a little bit of like, we just want to maintain, but there's definitely things that I'm sure a lot of people are, doing and not doing, again, kind of in relationship to what we talked about today, that are holding them back potentially from meeting like great quality people and actually, nurturing real true connections that will lead them towards that relationship that they're looking for. So the online dating aspect, I feel like maybe merits another conversation at some point.
Yeah. But to go back to this topic, we're kind of we're trying to tell our followers and clients more about like, ways that they can work on it and things that they're probably doing or not doing that they can change. Something that I will add is why are we doing it? And I think a huge reason, one reason as to why we're doing it is familiarity. If you are familiar to how someone is showing up and it's what you are sort of used to based off of randomly, let's say a parent growing up, didn't give you that like love that you needed, one of two things happens. You crave that love or you shut down completely. Or let's say you've had a previous relationship where that person didn't show up in the ways that you needed them to, so you just let go of all your boundaries. If you just were so used to just letting go and accepting this bad behavior, maybe over time, the domino effect is like when you see that bad behavior again, your brain is used to it, so it will be drawn toward it, will accept it, it will be, coming toward it. Like, for example, if I never saw physical abuse, which I have not, if I've never seen that as a child, and then that, like, I witnessed that in a relationship, or I go through that in a relationship, I may be more inclined to be like, hey, this isn't right for me. I'm going to pull away from this. There's like, verbal abuse, or there's some sort of abuse I'm not used to, and I'm not okay with it. But if, let's say, we have seen it, it was around us like at one point in our lives, and it's prevalent. If that were to happen, we're more inclined to like think of ways to work around it, be like, okay, maybe it was just there was something going on, and we'll kind of accept that badness because it's you know, something we've seen. It's not foreign to us. But if it's foreign to me and it's shocking to me, I'll leave quicker. So I think a big reason, again, going back to it, is like we stay to what's familiar, and then that domino effect happens where the same problem again with other people, because okay, I'm used to this, and our brain goes to like, challenge accepted. You don't want the things that I want, or you're acting a certain way that I'm used to. I'm going to try to change the story because the last one did this and it didn't work out, but like maybe this one will work out, and then I can, you know, I could feel better about it.
1,000%. I feel like that really does like that 360 with how we show up, and how that influences how we show up. And definitely like what you said, like about our past experiences and what we've been like exposed to in the past. And that's like, you know, in the majority, like that's what influences our current behavior is our past behavior, or what we have been either observing or endured in the past. So for sure, yeah, that definitely has, and we have to be, you know, conscious of that as well as we're putting ourselves out there in many different situations. Like, hey, asking ourselves, like sometimes, like, where is that coming from? Like, where is that need coming from? Where is that fear coming from? Where is that, you know what I mean? So we can then adjust ourselves. Is this justified? Because sometimes like, oh, but I just want this. Like sometimes it's important to ask why, or I'm just afraid of this, or I'm just going to automatically run away from this. And sometimes it's a question, you know, it is kind of questioning ourselves a little bit, and they'll be like, yeah, but why? Is this really a justified, you know, reaction to this? Is this really a justified, you know, want, need? Do we actually need this? You know, because some people are just like, well, I'm just like that. I'm like, no, well, why are you like that? Like, oh, you know, aren't we just supposed to find something and just be ourselves? I'm like, no, well, why are you someone that needs that confirmation and reassurance that they're on the same page as you on the first date? Why? You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason for that. Maybe it is something with your past relationships, or like something you have observed, you know, in the past. Maybe it's just like your past patterns, like of how you have just navigated to this point that just created this. But you know, it's not like, because people sometimes I just want to be myself and just stick to what and I'm like, no, but maybe these are the things that are actually holding you back, you know, that you need to potentially adjust. And that doesn't mean that you change who you are and being inauthentic to yourself, but rather becoming the person that you want to be, you know what I mean? Or just and becoming the better version of yourself. So because this is something, and I'm glad you kind of brought it up a little bit, but this is something that I hear a lot as well. Like, you know, isn't it just like important to just be ourselves? And it's like, I just want a guy to tell me right off the bat that he wants, and I'm just like, yeah, well, that doesn't mean that's how it's supposed to be. There's a reason for that. Let's like dig into the why.
Yeah.
You feel like you need that reassurance right away. Why? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just someone who needs to be exclusive, you know, right away. I'm just like that kind. I'm like, no. Like, why do you feel like you need that title during the first month of dating someone? Why do you need to have exclusivity? Maybe it's lack of boundaries, right? If you're not setting boundaries, you're also afraid that they're doing these things that you're doing with them with someone else. But let's say you have these boundaries, would you still feel the same? Maybe not. Let's explore that. You know, like, so yeah, absolutely. Sometimes like that questioning our even when you mentioned like a little while ago, and I kind of, you know, wanted to interject as well, and I forgot, is like gut feelings. You know what I mean? Gut feelings. What are they built on? Like gut feelings, or what people call their intuition or whatever. That's built on past experiences. So let's say I get on an airplane and I go and I look around the window and I'm like, oh, it's so dark. It's like it might rain, and I might be completely off. You know, my gut feeling tells me, oh my God, like this is dangerous. I'm like, you know what I mean? I hate flying, and I'm starting to sweat. Is this justified? Probably not. The pilot, however, you know, when they get on the plane and they look around and they go, oh, this, I've seen this before in training, and I've seen this in the thousands of hours that I've been flying. These cloud formations tell me that it's going to be, you know what I mean? Or this information tells me it gives me certain information about how the flight's going to be, turbulence, this, that. Now, their opinion matters. Mine doesn't. You know what I mean? So my intuition in that sense is irrelevant, because it's that intuition. Where is it really coming from? It's coming from fears. Maybe because I'm afraid of flying. Maybe it's someone, you know what I mean? Like that from my family told me that flying is dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of like, you know, cultivated that fear within, you know, myself.
I think that's where there's a difference between like intuition, gut feeling and intuition, aside from like anxiety and fear. Like sometimes we think those two are the same, but they're a little different. Intuition and gut feeling is more of like a calm, quiet feeling. It's like a voice in the back of your head that's like, I think this is what it is. And then it's you just like, you feel it. But anxiety is that thing that's like making, it's the fight or flight response, the overthinking, the sweating, the, you know, heart palpitations. Like that is more like, I have anxiety that this could be happening based off of what I've experienced, based off of what I've seen. Intuition is more like, this is like a, it's like a calming feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but there's a calming feeling to it. And I think that's where people kind of get the two confused.
Have you read, I'm just like looking, I'm just going to want to make sure that I get the right, yeah, Malcolm Gladwell. Have you read Blink by any chance?
Blink?
No?
Blink?
Yeah, a book called Blink, like
yeah,
Blink.
I read some of it.
So a lot of it, you know, really comes down to, and I really kind of like subscribe to that idea that a lot of like intuition, you know, if it needs to be like, if it's real intuition comes like from personal experience, like it comes from actual like learning of something. Like, so if I'm I don't know, an art critic, like, and I'm looking at something and I go, this is a fake one. You know what I mean? This is based, like my intuition, like it's intuition because it's based on thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of me looking at similar things. I don't even need to think about it. I don't need to look at, but this is because it's this year, and during this year there was this and that.
It's a
and like
calming feeling, you know?
It's yeah, it's a calming feeling, but it's like, it just, I know that it you know what I mean? I don't know. My intuition tells me that this must be like, this art piece must be a fake. You know what I mean? Just because of, again, just me being exposed, like all this information that I kind of see about it right now, just subconsciously tells me all of the, you know, these things. Now, if I just stood there and I just look at it, it tells me nothing. I don't have intuition about that because I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't have that experience. So then sometimes it could be kind of camouflaged as you know, fears and insecurities and my own kind of like opinions. Like, why am I? Oh, is it because I'm going to spend money on this or buy this, and now I'm like thinking that it might be fake? Because, you know, again, it's not coming from the right place. It's not coming from experience. It's not coming from actual knowledge. So a lot of times, again, it's like questioning that as well. Be like, okay, well, let me ask myself, why am I, you know what I mean, doing this? Yeah, the calmness and everything, sure, but sometimes, and I hope you agree when I say that, like sometimes it's rather difficult to analyze and say, like, is this coming from a calm place, or like, no, I think it's calm. You know what I mean? It's difficult to sometimes analyze that and really ask ourselves the right questions. But I'm like, hey, do I have reason to like believe that this, because has this happened to me before? Has this, and that's why like creating more opportunities and dating more like creates a, you know, a better person in general, because I'm learning more about other people as well as I'm learning more about myself. So I've learned how I've reacted to certain things. I'm like, yes, every time somebody does this and that, and every time somebody invites me over and I meet their family, I start thinking about these things, because that awakens certain, you know what I mean, insecurities or fears or blah, blah. And like that creates a thing. I'm like, wrong person, right? You know what I mean? Like my intuition is telling me, like, maybe it's too quick to judge that, judge this as your intuition, and maybe there are other things at play here that we can analyze and look at.
Yeah, which I always say that regardless of which one it is, I think sit on it and like don't act on emotion is like super important, because a lot of people, when they feel this way, they feel the need to like, okay, I'm feeling, I have all these thoughts, I have all these questions, I have all these, like, it's going, so I have to say something, I have to exert, I have to try to get clarity, I have to figure it out. You don't need to figure it out. You can sit with it, you can let it pass, like just kind of give yourself that time. What I think is super important is like journaling out all the thoughts that you're having, even if you feel like they're irrational, you don't know if it's a fear or an intuition, write it out, go do something else, go do an activity, go do something to kind of get your mind off of things, sleep on it, and like come back to it in a day or two and be like, okay, now that my head is a little bit more clear, let me try to sit with this again. You know, and I think people like immediately want to have those like instant gratification answers of like, why is this happening? I'll give a random one. Like, why is it that this person's not texting me and talking to me and asking me out on a date? And you get these irrational thoughts. So you start to question them. You start to, you know, kind of like be like, okay, what's going on between us? Like, I'm freaking out. Like, do you even want this? It's been like a day.
And that usually becomes the reason now for, you know what I mean? Like, and you're going to create that, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy right now that they're going to, okay. If there was no problem, now you've created one.
Yeah, because you're allowing these thoughts that again will come. You got to let them pass. So it's like, okay, it's there. I feel it. Let me sit on it. Let me sleep on it. Let me give it some time, come back to it. And is this like irrational, or is this something that's been a pattern? Like, has this been going on for a while? And then you can reassess then. But yeah, whenever you're feeling the emotion, I never think it's a good idea to feel like you need to act on it.
this is like a completely separate conversation. I feel like we covered like a ton here, but this is a
Yeah,
completely separate
yeah, yeah.
conversation. But I feel like to me, like dating, just like in like success in dating, just like in so many other areas of our lives, like really often comes down to just our ability. And I feel like if there is like one thing, and again, that I would love to have this conversation on a separate occasion as well,
Yeah,
is controlling our emotions. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah.
feel like if we're unable to do that, I feel like everything else, like you can't set a boundary if you can't control your emotion.
Hmm.
Because if you're sitting and you with a guy that you like find super attractive and you're like, I don't want to do this, but you can't control that emotion, you're like, ah, fuck it. It just feels so good. And you're just going to do that thing that you said that you're not going to do. You know what I mean? Then your ability, like you can understand that there should be boundaries. You can, but our
You
ability to
gotta doing
control
it.
emotions, because if you don't control them, they'll control you, and then
Yeah,
you won't be able. And that's just like, especially true for dating situations. It's just like our inability to control our emotions is always going to become the main reason why we are having a hard time, building up these strong, healthy, long-term relationships. And that's true on day one when you meet someone, as it is true like when you're 10 years together. And just like, that's a learning experience, like just learning to control these emotions, allowing things to happen, and then not having to like, just react, rather take the time, whether that's a day or like you said, and just respond to that in accordance and in alignment with the type of outcomes that we want, the objectives that we put ourselves, you know what I mean, and the type of person that we want to be, right? That's so important. And I feel like that should be like the first thing that, you know what I mean, that we need to, work on, because everything else is kind of built on top of that. Because our ability to, like I said, set boundaries or have certain conversations, or like, allow ourselves to date someone for a couple of months before we, is all dependent, because they're going to be sometimes like, I really want to know, like, you know what I mean? Like there's going to be some times, but our ability to control our emotions is really kind of like at the foundation of where everything else is going to build upon on top of,
yeah. I agree. I feel like that kind of like took it full circle. We talked
Yeah.
about all these things, then we realized that the core thing at the end of the day is being able to really learn and control those emotions as they come, because they're gonna come.
Yeah.
And I think you and I both agree that like when neither of us are trying to say that you shouldn't have these emotions, you shouldn't be upset if you feel ghosted. You're gonna feel that, feel it, but just deal with it in a healthier way where you're not feeling the need to like attach yourself or feel the need to like kind of like get answers from the other person. Sometimes it's just best to be like, okay, let me feel this with myself. Let me reassess. What do I need? Not what do they need? Not what do they want? What do I need?
Mm-hmm.
And what's important to me? And let me stick to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more we do it, the easier it actually becomes. You know what I mean? If I just allow myself to be grateful the first time, and I'm just like, even if I'm kind of feeling like I'm faking it, the second time it will be easier. It'll be easier, because I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
look, like last time I did that, I was like fine, and I was the next week I was dating someone else, and and you're creating that precedent, and you're creating more of that trust that you have within yourself to know that what you're doing is in alignment with the type of person that you want to be, and it's in alignment with your goals and all that stuff. So sometimes you do have to, when it comes to controlling your emotions, fake it till you make it, and say to yourself, no, I'm not going to do it, although I want to, or though I feel like that's the natural thing that I need to do right now, I'm not going to do it.
And it would be helpful to have someone that you can hold you accountable, whether that's you, whether that's me, whether that's another coach or therapist, or
Right.
someone that you trust that you can turn to be like, hey, I think I'm going back down that path again. These are my thoughts. Let's reassess what I need to be doing differently. And I think I always have like my mentor that I turn to. And it's always those moments of like, okay, I'm having that moment again. I have to reassess and kind of like have someone that you can kind of turn to hold you accountable, and to also just vent to, that they know that the best thing that works for you and how to help you through it, opposed to just like telling everyone and trying to get advice from every single person. So it's the last little snippet.
Absolutely. 100%. Hey, thank you so much. This has been a really, really great conversation. I would love to potentially continue. I feel like people who are watching this like are going to have a bunch of questions, because we touched on so many different aspects and components that I feel like both of us are and that's also great to hear, because it's great confirmation that like they're dealing with the same kind of things, and we're dealing with the same type of questions. So I know for a fact that so many people who are watching this, who potentially haven't worked with us in the past, are also dealing with these very specific situations, and I'll definitely be like super happy to like dive deeper into specific subjects like online dating or offline dating, or specific things or boundaries, right? We kind of like did a very rough kind of brush over some of these things, so I feel like maybe there is a continuation here. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
Likewise, I think this is exciting to kind of just connect with someone else who is also working with clients and doing these things. So if anyone has questions, I'd love for us to kind of sit down and have like a Q&A podcast where we kind of go over them together and we can see what their questions are. But yeah, this was exciting, and I'm looking forward to doing more podcasts with you.
Likewise, I'm going to put all your information in the description of this video, and then you'll be able to also share that video with some of your platforms as well. So thank you again so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, guys.
Of course.